Good afternoon and happy Sunday to everyone. So I have another video I would like to share with you, and let's get started by just watching this video.
Many medical professionals on the front lines compare the conditions that they face to what it's like in war zones. One Chicago emergency room doctor spoke with our lead national correspondent, David Bagnow, during a few chaotic moments on his shift. David, what did you see? Because I hear chaotic is the right word here.
Well, Gail, we had no idea that Dr. Scott Samlin was going to answer the Skype call for the interview in the emergency department. Now, there were other doctors attending to the patients in need, but what you're about to hear may be one of the most sobering and surreal accounts you have heard from the front line so far.
This is the most scared I've ever been being an ER doctor. And it's not just because of me. It's because I have a wife and a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old at home. I don't want to expose them. People say it's our job. It's not our job, it's our duty, and it's what we signed up for.
That's Dr. Scott Samlin. He's an emergency room doctor at Mount Sinai Hospital on the west side of Chicago.
I deal with gunshots every day and trauma and crazy stuff, and this is the only thing that scares me.
How many patients do you see on a daily basis that are suspected of being COVID positive?
Over 60 to 70% every day.
We keep hearing that young people are not as affected by this. Has that been your experience?
You can tell that the 27-year-old I intubated last week who had no medical problems.
Dr. Samlin says anyone arriving at the emergency room now who has respiratory problems is being treated as if they're positive for COVID, because doctors can't afford to wait the 3 days that it's been taking to get the results back.
So we do deductive reasoning. If their white count is normal and their lymphopenic, which is something that we look at, and their x-ray looks like COVID and their influenza negative, it's COVID. Well, we're having another COVID come in. Do you want to see the setup before it comes in?
Please, please.
So before we go in, we put on gowns, we put on goggles, we put on as much PPE as we had. Respirators, we could have them to intubate the patient or put a tube down their throat. But this is becoming all too common. What? The box is right here.
The physician protection box, as they call it, is something the doctors had made at a local plastic manufacturer to help them deal with the COVID crisis.
This way I'm not in front of the patient's mouth.
Protective gear is scarce here, Dr. Samlin says, especially masks.
When you use them for a shift, we put them in a brown paper bag.
This COVID patient who's coming in right now, the suspected COVID, he's coming by ambulance, I assume. How critical is he?
They're doing CPR on him. Yeah.
These patients are dying alone, which is really sad.
And that is because suspected COVID patients need to be isolated, says Dr. Chris Scadeller, who's using a respirator that he got from his previous job and a filter that his father, who works in construction, gave him.
How you doing?
Frustrated. There was the CDC said we could use bandanas as a form of protection for ourselves instead of masks. So I got one. I carry in my pocket. It's frustrating. It feels like the government let us down.
How you doing?
Thank you for asking. I'm not well. It's not a joke. I want people to stay home. This is the real deal.
Are they still performing CPR?
No, they're dead.
There was no time to even test that patient for COVID, but the precautions were taken. Dr. Samlin says beside PPE and a break, this is what they need.
If you have a friend or a colleague or anybody you know in the healthcare industry who's working on the front lines, just send them a text saying, thinking about you. God bless you. Love you. Thank you for what you're doing. That's all we need.
On behalf of a grateful country, thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
Oh, David, I was so struck with Dr. Sandlin when he said, no, they're dead, the simplicity in which he said that. And when he also said, many times you don't take your work home, but you have no choice but to take this home. It's really overwhelming. overwhelming to hear these
Gail,
stories.
I
And
want you to know
heartbreaking.
that they started I want you to know they started a GoFundMe page so they could raise money to buy their own equipment. That's how scarce the equipment is. And they've gotten money and they've bought it. And they're using everything from the painter's mask to athlete's goggles just to do the job daily. And they are exposed to this from the start to the end of their shift.
We can all say thank you. Thank you, David.
All right,
Thank you.
that's a powerful piece there.
Okay, folks, what do you think of that? Now, I'd like you to sincerely try something here. I'm going to replay the portion of the video where they're interviewing Dr. Matt Samlin. And close your eyes, keep your eyes open, whatever, but tune into the background noise. Listen for all the noises that you would hear in an ER room setting outside of Dr. Samlin's voice.
Many medical professionals on the front lines compare the conditions.
Expose them. People say it's our job. Not our job, it's our duty, and it's what we signed up for.
That's Dr. Scott Samlin. He's an emergency room doctor at Mount Sinai Hospital on the west side of Chicago.
I deal with gunshots every day and trauma and crazy stuff, and this is the only thing that scares me.
How many patients do you see on a daily basis that are suspected of being COVID positive?
Over 60 to 70% every day.
We keep hearing that young people are not as affected by this. Has that been your experience?
You can tell that the 27-year-old I intubated last week who had no medical problems.
Dr. Samlin says anyone arriving at the emergency room now who has respiratory problems is being treated as if they're positive for COVID because doctors can't afford to wait the 3 days that it's been taking to get the results back.
So we do deductive reasoning. If their white count is normal and their lymphopenic, which is something that we look at, and their x-ray looks like COVID and their influenza negative, it's COVID. Well, we're having another COVID come in. Do you want to see the setup before it comes in?
Please, please.
So before we go in, we put on gowns, we put on goggles, we put on as much PPE as we had.
Can you hear all the background conversations and the noise of the gloves and things?
Respirators, we could have them to intubate the patient, or put a tube down their throat. But this is becoming all too common. What? The box is right here.
The physician protection box, as they call it, is something the doctors had made at a local plastic manufacturer to help them deal with the COVID crisis.
This way I'm not in front of the patient's mouth.
Protective gear is scarce here, Dr. Samlin says, especially masks.
When you use them for a shift, we put them in a brown paper bag.
This COVID patient who's coming in right now, the suspected COVID, he's coming by ambulance, I assume. How critical is he?
They're doing CPR on him. Yeah.
How you doing?
Thank you for asking. I'm not well. It's not a joke. I want people to stay home. This is the real deal.
Are they still performing CPR?
No, they're dead.
There was no time to even test that patient for COVID, but the precautions were taken. Dr. Samlin says beside PPE and a break, this is what they need.
If you have a friend or a colleague or anybody you know in the healthcare industry who's working on the front lines, just send them a text saying, thinking about you. God bless you. Love you. Thank you for what you're doing. That's all we need.
So what do you think, folks? What did you notice in the background? I hesitated to do this video because I know it's going to be controversial. But when my partner showed this to me, I just absolutely laughed. And then last night we had a friend over for a barbecue and shared this video with him, and he laughed too. He couldn't believe it. He actually said thank you for showing this to me. He doesn't watch TV, and it opened up his eyes to what people are having to deal with. Think about it, folks. Think about all the movies you've seen in hospitals. If someone goes into cardiac arrest, what's going to happen? The doctors and the nurses are going to be scrambling to perform CPR. Someone's going to yell out code whatever, code blue, code red, whatever. So everyone comes to help the most urgent needed patient in the ER room. There's going to be equipment used. I imagine they're going to pull out the paddles. I don't work in hospitals, but I'm trained in CPR, and I've had to do the training for the AEDs, the automatic external defibrillators. And those things have a really loud microphone. It tells you when the unit is charged, tells you to clear, it says clear, so everyone steps away from the mannequin or the person. And that microphone is loud, and the beeping is loud. And you can hear the subtle beep of, it sounds like one machine in the background. You can hear casual conversation of other people in the environment. But if there is a CPR situation where elevated response is going to be needed, voices are going to be louder, and you can watch this doctor lean back. He looks through a doorway or a gap in the wall, and apparently has line of sight of what's going on. And if he has line of sight in a hospital, I think we should be able to hear the auditory environment of what's going on. It doesn't add up to me. And here's another thing. The other videos that I've seen of supposedly doctors and nurses who are working in these crisis centers that are overrun with COVID patients, they'll pull their face mask off, and they'll specifically point out the red marks around their face because they've been wearing their PPE equipment all day. So I'm looking at this and I'm asking the question is, if this is such a contagious environment, why are they even pulling off their PPE equipment when they're sitting at the computers? And if there's such a shortage of the PPE equipment, why would they be taking it off and on all day? I think if there's that much of a shortage, I'd be putting that equipment on, and if this is that contagious, I wouldn't want to be risking taking it on and off. But I don't know, maybe they're taking it on and off to prevent contamination of other patients. It'd be great if someone who works in the ER could chime in on this. So let's continue with this doctor who has the line of sight on a CPR cardiac arrest situation.
No, I already called.
Respirators, we're going to have them to intubate the patient or put a tube down the throat. But this is becoming all too common. What? The box is right here.
He's coming by ambulance, I assume. How critical is he?
They're doing CPR on him. Yeah.
These patients are dying alone, which is really sad.
And that is because suspected COVID patients need to be isolated.
How you doing?
Thank you for asking. I'm not well. It's not a joke. I want people to stay home. This is the real deal.
Are they still performing CPR?
No, they're dead.
There was no time to even test that patient for COVID, but the precautions were taken. Dr. Samlin says beside people...
Sorry, folks. Don't buy it. Come on, think for yourselves.
Well, how do I put this? Fake news.
All right, here's a video from Dr. Christy Reisinger, and she seems legitimate. I was able to find her doing an internet search very easily.
Hi, welcome to Your Health with Dr. Christy. My name's Dr. Christy Reisinger, and today on Your Health, we're going to talk about COVID-19. There's a lot of misconceptions out there, and I'm here to clear some of those up. The first question that I had personally was for those that...
And so you can watch the whole video on your own, but what I want to point out to you is she talks about only 80% of the cases, 80% of the cases are mild. Only 5% of the cases are severe, and here's the timeline that they're seeing for those severe cases.
Have severe disease, here's the timeline of what we're seeing. Shortness of breath usually occurs at about 5 to 6 days. Admission to the hospital usually occurs at about 7 to 8 days. An ICU admission and intubation usually occurs at about 10 days, but the progression to respiratory failure can be really rapid and quick, which is concerning. An early warning sign for severe and critical disease is something called hypoxia, which is what I mentioned, a low O2 saturation, but you may not have many symptoms. But that is something that your doctor should be aware about and take note of, and you should be in daily communication with him or her if you're found to have hypoxia but you're not having other symptoms.
So what are the odds that this ER doctor, Matt Samlin, agrees to do an interview from the emergency room, and a COVID patient is transported in by ambulance? Dr. Matt Samlin does say, we have a COVID patient coming in. And then they say in the same video that they can't wait 3 days for those tests to come back. So it sounds to me, one, they're presuming that this patient has COVID-19. And then two, given the timeline of symptoms, of the severe symptoms that you just heard from Dr. Reisinger, what are the odds that someone would get transported in by ambulance and go into cardiac arrest during the interview? It's plausible. But with this bad acting, it doesn't add up to me.
You are fake news.
So I made an attempt to find Dr. Scott Samlin online. You know, the name could be slightly spelled a few different ways. I tried a few iterations. I had no success. I even went to, I'm not going to show it all, but I went to Mount Sinai, Chicago's website, looked at all their locations. They do have a Find a Doctor feature on their website. I couldn't get that to populate any results. No search I did turned up any information for any doctor, let alone trying to find Dr. Matt Samlin. So I know you can't prove a negative, but I made a good concerted effort via online and had no success. Feel free to try for yourself. So here I want to show you another doctor's perspective, Jay Bhattacharya, and did a search for him. He comes right up very easily, works at Stanford University. Again, here's the website. You can watch the full video. I'm just going to show a couple moments.
Can you tell us precisely why you upset so many people? They told you to get with the program, they attacked you. What have you done that's so wrong, Jay?
I don't pay very much attention to the press. I've been focused on trying to understand how many people actually have the COVID virus infection. And so the last few weeks since that op-ed, I've been organizing or helping to organize studies to figure out how many people have antibodies to the virus in them, inside their bodies, as evidence that that they've had infection. Most people that get the virus actually are going to have very few symptoms. It's obviously a very deadly virus that some people leads to hospitalizations and deaths. We've seen that in pictures all over the world. The question is, how large a fraction of the population is that? Is the death rate 0.1%? Is the death rate 3% like the World Health Organization originally said? It's a big difference, 1 in 1,000 versus 3 in 100, I'd much rather avoid a 3 in 100 chance of dying than a 1 in 1,000 chance of dying. So the question, that's the question I've been focused on, is developing evidence to understand how many people actually have been infected as a result of the virus.
And how are you
All right, there's a nice objective viewpoint from a doctor at a prominent university, contradicting everything that's being said in the media. Don't know what to tell you, folks, but for me, it's been more than a dozen years since I've had cable television in my home. I gave up on it a long time ago, just like this good doctor has said. Don't pay attention to the media. So instead, I try to seek out actual footage on the internet, because I always can't get it everywhere. I can't get to New York and get on the ground and see what's going on, but I try to seek out actual footage that's been unaltered as best as I can tell, so I can see things objectively as possible. I can listen to people speak in their entirety, not just sound bites or short clips or durations taken out of context, but in their entirety, to see if I can get the full message and not get any spins or commentary or editorials on what people said. And another thing I've been looking at is actual footage of the hospitals in New York.
I see EMS stretchers lining down the block. It's jam-packed waiting room filled with 30 to 40 patients next to each other, coughing, giving COVID-19 to one another. There is physically no more room in the emergency room. You bring any more patients in, then you cannot walk. We had a few patients die in the emergency room because the hospital's full.
So that's the message the media is telling us. And then, thankfully, there are some smart, intelligent, truth-seeking individuals who are doing their own investigation, and here's an example of that.
Phyllis and William Mack Pavilion here on 7th Avenue in Manhattan. And usually on a Saturday at this time, this is pretty busy. But as you can see, there's not much going on. In fact, there's not much going on at the Phyllis and William Mack Pavilion either. Emergency. Oh, dog needs to drop one. So.
All the people supposed to be getting tested, and a big mad show. People look at the testing centres. This is what they're telling you testing is going on in. Where's the testing? They're empty. They're abandoned people. There is no testing going on. Wake up, people. Wake bloody well up. Where's the testing? Where is it? The show that's getting put on for you. Leo and Coveney and Simon will be down now for the photo op soon and have loads of people with masks letting on to be coming in to get tested. Look, do we there is no bloody testing. Wake up, people. Right down to the end, look. There is no testing going on in these tents. It's all a show. Wait.
So I've seen dozens of these videos, and you can find them on YouTube. They're a little bit more challenging to find on YouTube. I'm getting frustrated with the number of videos I find that are being taken down. So here's a good place where you can go if you want to find some of this individual investigation of what's going on. The truth seekers out there pounding the pavement. Go to 153news.net. And here's a video that's, there's a bicyclist in New York. He has another one that's over 30 minutes long of him doing a bicycle tour around New York City, looking at all the hospitals. And here's another one he did on April 11th. This is near Central Park, where supposedly there's a field hospital being built or has been built in Central Park. I think I also heard a story that they're burying dead in the Central Park, or considering it. This is being mirrored from YouTube, so there's the address to the YouTube address, YouTube video.
Excuse me, Target open?
Yes.
Where is the closest one?
34th Street.
I'm surprised.
Yeah, and this one was up on the east side.
I mean, fully open for everybody.
Yeah, Target. Yeah, we get to wait sometimes to get in, but...
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Stay safe.
You too.
Are you seeing a lot of crowding at the hospitals?
I'm seeing the hospital. It's in the hospital, but I don't go in.
Outside, is it? I want to go to a hospital to see the crowds. You don't see any crowding? Which house? Cornell, where is that? York and what street?
69.
I'll go check it out, but I feel there are going to be a lot of people.
So I want to commend this bicyclist. He's posted a couple of good videos. He hasn't shown anything of any crowded waiting rooms, people waiting outside. There seems to be none of this overflow in the hospitals that the media is portraying. So I know this is controversial and this is going to shake things up, but be smart, people. Think for yourselves. Think for yourselves. Because it's scary. If they're trying to pull this over our eyes, what are they trying to do here? Please don't live in fear. Please don't fear your neighbors. They want us scared of each other. You know, if we're afraid of our friends and our family and the people in our community because of some invisible contagion, then it's really going to be hard for us to unify. And if we are separated and confused about what's going on, what is happening behind the scenes? Why are they doing this? Be smart, people. Be smart. Pray and meditate. Hold God, Creator, Allah, the Divine in your heart. Stay grounded and be in the truth. I hope you stay safe. Take care.